All right. So Ryan, thank you very much for that opportunity. You allowed me to interview you, and I'm very much excited about to know more and to know exactly what happened, how you end up to be an entrepreneur.
My first employment was in a PR agency in my early 20s. I worked in fashion PR, working with some designers and celebrity stuff. And I quickly became, it quickly became quite obvious that I wanted to be self-employed. So I started my PR consultancy I think I was about 23, 24, whilst freelancing at other agencies. So I was working with clients privately and also going into different agencies for a day here, and then a few weeks here and there to sort of help them with their campaign, with dealing with the media, with celebrity stuff. So I kind of, at first, I was mixing the two. And then over the
Yeah.
kind of, I guess over a period of a few years, really, I really got a taste for being my own boss. I'm naturally somebody who likes to be in charge, and I'm quite strategic. So what I found was when I was dealing with clients privately, I was consulting with them on their, the publicity, their branding, all that stuff. And what
Yeah.
happened quite quickly was I found that I was one of my clients one day said, this isn't really PR anymore. This is more like coaching. Do you realize that? And I said, what the hell is coaching? It wasn't really a thing I was trying to do. And then
Yeah.
subsequently, I ended up meeting a well-known life coach and working with them. And I ended up really developing a taste for it. So in terms of how did I get to being an entrepreneur, I'd say I've always been one. I've always been someone who likes to start things and kind of go against the grain a bit. But yeah, it really was a case of working in PR and then deciding I wanted to do it myself. Everybody at the time said, you're crazy to do this at 23, 24. No one does that. And then it evolved actually into a coaching business. And in 2012, I moved to Ibiza and I wrote Be Your Own Publicist. And I spent that year really getting a lot of things together in my mind and putting things in place to grow my
Yeah.
business.
Okay. So the things are really evolving for you quite naturally. Is
Yeah,
it correct?
yeah.
So there was a no really sharp jump. Like some people are, they afraid about making sharp move, and somehow it seems like you made it in a very smooth way.
I don't think
So
it
what?
wasn't
Yeah.
smooth, but I know what you mean. I think some people have that thing where maybe they get fired or they
Yeah.
really want to quit and they have to. It was kind of a combination. To tell you the truth, I always wanted to be my own boss, and I remember actually there was a kind of jump. Actually, it was in about 2012, and I was looking after a few people, doing their PR and nothing big, just a few little cool events and clients, and I really had a moment where I realized I have to step this up now, and I'd moved to Ibiza, and my kind of jump really was I talked to a few journalists about what I was doing, and a website in America wrote this piece on me, and they said young lifestyle entrepreneur, and I realized then like I have to live up to that and make it work if they're saying it.
All right. And did you know actually about business, how to run it? I mean, what kind of education
God, no.
do you have in terms of entrepreneurship?
A lot of trial and error. I'll be honest. I mean,
Okay.
when a few people in my family are kind of self-made and entrepreneurs and things like that. So I spoke to some people, but to tell you the truth, and to be really honest with you, I just learned as I went along. When I did the PR thing, I remember I Facebooked a really well-known PR person who was on TV in the UK, and
Yeah.
I said to them, "Can I take you for lunch and and ask your advice?" And they were very kind. They said, "Yeah, of course," and I'd love to give you advice and well done for what you're doing. But in terms of like what I'm doing now, I mean, I look after clients in 4 countries. I'm teaching groups. I'm selling programs. I had to sort of learn that, if I'm honest, the hard way. I did a lot of mistakes. But in terms of learning about business, I think the best thing you can do is learn from people who know more than you, which I do now, and also
Yeah.
just start. I find a lot of people, they want to do it and they don't take action until they feel ready. But
Yeah.
something I teach is you have to start even though you don't feel ready, and then just learn as you go along.
Okay, that's pretty much common trait of
Mhm.
the entrepreneurs. They are learning on the way.
Yeah, yeah.
And I understand it because in a way kind of business is changing and evolving so quickly that you're supposed to learn like being already there.
Mhm.
And that's for some people it's quite a tricky concept to grasp. You know, it's like, okay, shall I actually dive into the water without knowing how to swim?
Yeah, yes.
So did you have your own doubts?
Oh, where do I start? Yeah, lots. One of the things was in 2012, that's when I really changed everything and I started to officially do coaching and press and media. And something scary happened because I left London. I was living in Ibiza and I was writing for a few websites. Things were moving nicely, but not too fast. And all of a sudden I realized that, because I was doing interviews and websites, stories for websites and that kind of thing, I was the brand. So I didn't have an office to support me or a boss to go and talk to if things got tough or
Yeah.
a colleague to cry with or, I don't need to cry, but you know what I mean? That I didn't have that support network. And the fear really, if I'm honest with you, a lot of the time is what are people going to think? Sometimes people will write rude things about your work or they maybe say unkind things about something you've done. And when it's just you doing it, it's a very different kind of fear than when you have an office because one can take it personally. But I've learned to not. In terms of doubt, yeah, lots. One of the biggest ones was before things really changed and the business grew. There was a time when I didn't have really as many clients as I wanted, and I sat down and actually looked at everything on paper, the financial stuff. And there was a doubt of, okay, can I really make this work? Or do I need to go and maybe go back to London and work in an office? Yeah.
Yeah. So what is if you would summarize the strategy,
Mhm.
how to overcome fears or doubts, what would you recommend to people who are right now having doubts on their own?
I think, so two things. I think the first is if you can have some kind of spiritual practice. Um, I practice a path called Nichiren Buddhism, so I chant a lot and I say the prayers and I study the stuff, and that I feel like that keeps me quite focused and in a certain mental headspace. I also
Mm-hmm.
think, and whatever's right for you. But I think also it's really important to keep studying. I read all the time or I listen to things, on my iPod, and people joke with me that I always have my earphones in, and it's because I'm studying or I'm listening to books and I'm reading. And I find that if you're constantly learning and you're studying and you're taking in more, you feel more empowered. And the third thing, to be honest, in terms of, overcoming doubts or fears and stuff, is take really big action. When
Yeah.
lots of people come to see me because they're a coach or a consultant and they want me to help them get clients and get in the media or build their business. And I say, okay, what are you doing about it? And most of the time it's, I'm too scared to do anything, which is normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But the biggest way to overcome any kind of fear or doubt or anxiety is take big action. Some people will say, oh, I might email 5 people. I'll say, no, email 50. Really big action creates lots of movement. And I find that also, it kind of takes some of the anxiety away.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense, but what right now you describe, I think it's really very important thing because from my experience working with coaches, what I noticed that they do really like to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a part which very often stops them from acting because they
Yeah.
always think that it's not enough, that they haven't learned enough, and they're not confident, and they are getting into the learning trap.
Oh, I love that. I like that way
Yeah.
you've said that because no, it's 100% true. I taught a 6-week group program in New York and
Yeah.
called Marketing Your Gift. And I was teaching coaches how to market themselves. And it was the same thing. And I ended up doing a class and I actually said to people, nobody buys your certificates. Nobody buys your qualifications. They buy you and they buy, your image kind of thing. And if you
Yeah.
want to be a coach, the most important thing you can do is, you've got to put yourself in a position where your clients want to be like you. And
Yeah.
what I mean is, if you're teaching business, you should have a successful business. Otherwise, you're not coaching.
Yeah.
And what I actually found was it ties in very nicely with the last question. And what I say to people is, you know, take action even before you feel ready. Don't wait for that. I think maybe you'll agree, a lot of people hide behind taking another course
Yes.
and they hide behind one more certificate. And I say to
Yeah.
them, if you don't feel ready, that's fine, but you're never going to feel ready for anything big. That's just the way the mind is. So I tell them to, send the proposals out, send the articles out, email the clients. And what they find is things start moving and they're like, oh, I didn't know that, I didn't know that would work because I didn't take another course. And I said, well,
Yeah,
you've got to just keep moving even if you don't feel ready.
that's a great advice. That's really great advice because you, in a way, you will never, it doesn't matter how much you read or you will never learn how to ride bicycle,
Agree.
by reading. Yeah. So through
I like
doing,
that.
and that's one of the entrepreneurial qualities, guys. So please pay attention what Ryan is saying. Yeah. But the guy already walked his talk, I would say. And
Thanks.
what about family and friends? Was it support? Was it resistance?
At the time I left, I make my turning point leaving London in 2012. Um, and at that point, I would be honest, I had a few friends that I don't think were the healthiest relationships. So I sort of, made a point of focusing more on people who had what I wanted and embodied certain qualities. So in terms of friendships, yeah, absolutely. I've got some amazing, very supportive friends. In family, yeah, they're very supportive. I'm very close to my mum. We talk all the time, and she's very good with advice and strategy. And sometimes she'll say things to me, and I'm like, Mum, you should charge for this. This is coaching, and
Yeah.
she kind of doesn't realize. And then, yeah, some people in the family were a little bit maybe cautious, but always supportive. I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive family. I think if a person is in that situation where they have maybe children to children to pay for and a mortgage and stuff, then I would never suggest just jumping. I sort of made a point. I also make a point of saying to people, try and make sure you've got savings, and you don't always have to just jump from employment to self-employment. Phase it out. So maybe you start to develop your business on the weekends, or you start to do it in the evenings, so that when you do jump, the crossover is smoother. If you have no clients and no income, and I was coaching someone the other day in New York, and she was saying, I just want to jump and make it happen. And I said, but let's be honest, you have no income from clients, and not to be negative about it, but it might be a slightly more reasonable idea to build up some movement with that on the side, so that when you do leave, it's a smooth transition.
Make perfect sense in my experience of starting multiple businesses, and very often something doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, so you need to have some kind of room, to change, and then finally it will work, no doubt. But there could be times when it's tough and it's not working. Yeah.
Oh yes.
All right. So my next question is that actually I'm really curious, and I would like to ask like every person whom I'm interviewing about energy level. So in comparison to people around you when you were working at somebody's company, or you were employed, what was your energy level in comparison to other guys? I would say from scale from 1 to 10. 10 the highest and 1 is the lowest.
I'm quite hyper, so probably maybe eight or 9.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not as bad now, but I talk a lot when I get ideas or I get excited, and I always have kind of like 3 notebooks around, and
okay,
I'm always on.
Yeah, but in a way, it's a part of your direction in the business. Yeah, you're supposed to be very, very easygoing and connecting person. Yeah,
I would say, I mean, it depends on the day. It's if I didn't sleep well or if I don't feel well, obviously it's lower. But normally I have quite a high level. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of that transition, I just want you to put maybe some numbers or some kind of to give people some idea. If you would evaluate your transition to self-employment, and on a scale again from 1 to 10, 1 is it was very stressful and difficult, and 10 it was smooth and painless.
To be honest, I mean, it's hard for me to answer because I've been self-employed more than I was employed. But if I had to put a number, it's a good question. I would say, I'm going to be honest, probably 5. It's somewhere in the middle. And I say that, I hope that's an okay answer, but because I've had both sides of it now. I've gone through the times when I launched things that didn't work, and it's great because you can learn from all that and you can use it. But at the time, it was very stressful. So if I'm honest, I would say probably 5, probably in the middle.
So if you would name, for example, 1 or 2 factors which made it hard,
All good,
and 1 or 2 which made it smoother. So what those factors would be?
Okay, so the hard ones. The two biggest things that I found really difficult. One was the sense of uncertainty. Where are my next clients going to come from? You know.
Yeah.
And two, I've not really talked about this before, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate. It can be a little bit lonely, actually, at times. You know, I mean, I have great friends, and you know, I get on really well with all of my clients. But sometimes, what made it tough was, you know, you'd see pictures on Facebook of like an office Christmas party, or you know, people going out with their colleagues, and I realized very quickly I didn't have that support system. You know, when in an agency, you talk to the person next to you about the client being rude, or you know, about the payment late. When it's just you as an entrepreneur, it's really important to somehow get that support. So yeah, I would say the uncertainty and the sort of the perceived loneliness, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that was the difficult part. What about what made the transition smoother?
Smoother. The first one was I like to think I'm quite a quick learner. So what I did was I sat down. I had a point last year where I put the numbers down, and I needed to make sure certain things happened and whatever. And I made a decision that no matter what, I would achieve that and I would do it. And what made it easier was I literally found people and courses that I needed to learn from. A lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in this idea of I'll figure it out myself. And the truth is, you waste a lot of time and money. You really do. You know, the minute I took a course with a life coach, business coach, and I started working one-on-one, it was like fast forward 6 months in a week. Well, maybe not a week, you know what I mean? Because they could teach me things I didn't know. So made it easier was learning from people that knew more than I did and had what I wanted. And that's why my clients come to me, because they'll say, well, you have the, you know, you do the press and you do the products and you have the clients around the world. How can I learn from you? And I like to pass on what I've learned. So that's the first one. The second one was, I guess, the feeling of freedom. When things started to work and go well, and you know, the clients were coming to me and the money came in, and it was a lovely feeling of being able to literally feel the freedom. You know, in an office, you have to be there at 9 and leave at 5, or you have to, well, let's be honest, 9 and 7, something like that. But because of my business and where it is now, I'm very lucky. I mean, I'm in Canada visiting family at the moment, but I can go back to Ibiza and work from there, or I can go to London and work from there. The minute I tasted that freedom when I was in Ibiza, actually, that's what made it easier. Was I kind of kept my eye on the prize.
Yes, to be your own boss and decide what you do, what you don't do, when you do. That's quite amazing. I agree with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade it.
It's great motivation. Yeah. So okay, so in terms of your transition to self-employment, what would be one main thing which you would do differently after you went through all that way, you know, to your own business, and now you're successful in the coaching? And what one thing you would do differently?
Well, there's lots, but I think the first one would be...
Okay, two things. Let's go for two things.
I would have taken advice sooner from people who... I put off getting coached. I did, and learning from programs, because I kept looking at things, and I'm sure you can understand what I mean. And I kept thinking, I don't want to spend the money on that. And it was this blockage. And the minute I did that, like I said to you just now, all these things changed, and I learned things, some of which I teach my clients now, and they're going, oh my God, you know, that's amazing. So the first thing I would have done differently is I would have invested in myself sooner. That's a better way of putting it. I would have invested in myself and my success much sooner. And the second thing is I would have been, I don't know, actually. I think I probably would have been a bit nicer to myself. I was very, like, I'm always very driven, but I was very kind of hard on myself at the start, you know, like, have to get this number in today, or I have to get these clients, and I have to, you know, so I think I would have been a bit more, I would have maybe relaxed a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. So you were hard on yourself and judging or demanding to make it better or to make it sooner, or, I understand that. It's in a way science or perfectionism a little bit, and make things happen.
I like things to be successful.
Yeah. All right, good. So any possible regrets, for example, about your decision? It doesn't seem like, but I just want to ask you. No,
Nah.
no regrets.
No, I love it.
That was that was a good thing to do.
Yeah, I'm very
All
lucky.
right,
You know,
and
I have clients who, you know, like I said, in several different countries, and I'm very lucky because I genuinely like all of my clients, and we get on very well, and sometimes we talk between sessions socially. Yeah, I'm very grateful, and I'm very happy with, you know, with everything. So no regrets.
yeah, all right. And as for the let's say the number one change, that huge change which happened because of your jump to self-employment. So what is that one number change?
I've I think I don't know how to articulate it, but I'll tell you sort of. I guess I'll sort of paint a picture. It's only now, a few years later of doing this, that I realize I realize you actually can have what you want. Before, when I was working for other people and I was a publicist and I was doing all these events, I loved it. It was great, but the money always goes to somebody else. The achievement essentially goes to somebody else. When I was, you know, when I became self-employed and I started to build my own business and my practice and my client base, there was this beautiful thing happen where I realized that I've actually, in a sense, achieved what I wanted to when I set out. Obviously, now I'm setting new goals. So in terms of the big change, I would honestly say it's that freedom to actually create the life and business that you want. It doesn't feel like work to me. Some days it does, and some days it's, you know, challenging stuff happens. But I would say the biggest change is that sense of, you know, wow, you really can achieve what you want, and the freedom that comes with being able to, you know, work with clients when I'm in Ibiza or London, or like I said, visiting family, and all I need is my laptop downstairs, and I, you know, sit there with my coffee. And so it's the freedom and the knowledge that you can have what you want. That's the biggest change.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, in a way, I totally can relate, because somehow it is quite unique combination of when you feel that you are growing in any possible ways, because you are learning and you are getting more professional, and at the same time you paid so much more, and and rewards are not comparable with what you used to have.
I love the way you said that, because I think it's so spot on, isn't it? You can't compare working in an office and getting an award to that feeling of being self-employed. You know, when I taught my first group program, it was like 20, I can't remember, it was 20 something, you know, New Yorkers learning my work. It was, I can't tell you how, you know, grateful and happy and, you know, all that stuff I was. So yeah.
And practically last question which I would like to ask you is, what is your advice for people who just right now watching and thinking about starting their own business?
Okay, I have lots, but I'm going to give one because you've asked for one. So,
okay.
Number one, I always want to give 10. The number one piece of advice I would give is invest in yourself. So if you want to start a business, take a course in how to learn a business. Study people who have what you want. I went through this, you know, like I said to you just now, I went through this long period of making lots of mistakes. And the minute I invested in myself, everything changed. And I'm about to put together, start my next group program, and that includes everything I learned about getting clients. So the number one piece of advice I would give people is, even if you're sat there and you don't want to spend the money on a coach or a course, really think about it as an investment in yourself, because when you work with somebody who knows more than you do about something, you save time and money, but also you get to benefit. This sounds a bit funny, but you benefit from all their mistakes because they can show you what not to do as well. So, you know, don't be foolish and think you can do it alone. You might be able to, but it'll take a lot longer and it's more expensive. So yeah, invest in yourself.
Okay. All right. Great advice. And guys, we had in our interview room Ryan Locke, and thank you very much for your time.
Have a nice day.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.